I need a sip of you, God, 'cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Ooh. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a saying. Come quench my thirst, Lord. Because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. Water for the thirsty. I drink,
it's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You will find them when you seek them with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. Cause the time is coming soon when every eye gon' see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst, but the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink, refreshing ink flowing out of cups. This life they gotta touch, you liberate them out of cuffs. Their faith is undivided trust, created us up out of dust. He's worthy of fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give her honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who decide to drink it up.
like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Hard weekend, it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer. I need you in my life. Time seems crazy. I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
Good night, everybody. Welcome to Water for the Thirsty.
What up?
This is the beginning of year 5, and we're here with the original crew. Of course,
we're like in kindergarten.
Huh? Yeah.
It's like kindergarten.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
We're in real school.
Yeah. We graduated. We're moving along still. With us, of course, is, you know, the faces, Sharika and Kenrick. And we are here for another year.
Let's do it.
We are.
Kenrick, you missed the reflection last year.
Last week.
We missed the reflection last episode. So before I get into having you reflect, let's just pray, because we didn't do that. Father, be with us tonight, send your spirit, and Lord, we're thankful for this opportunity to have been in your word, for this time that you've allotted to us for these last 4 years. We thank you for the ways that your spirit and the word has transformed us and changed us and grown us, matured us. And we're looking forward to continuing that process into year 5 and beyond. maybe continue to be an inspiration for others to want to thirst a little bit more for your word and drink it more deeply is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. So we were reflecting. Well, there was only Sharika really. No, we all did reflect.
Yeah, but I was the only one with the history.
She was the only one with the history from the beginning to reflect. So I have to ask you at the beginning. 4 years later, how is Kenrick different? Is Kenrick different?
I'm different in a lot of ways. I'll probably regressed in some ways. I don't know. I'm always that. I don't know. I guess you should. I mean, you should definitely see progress. The way you think, the way you view things, the way you converse with God, where you know, how that relates to others. So I guess all that exists. I don't know.
You don't know how you're different? You can't
I don't,
feel, or you
I
don't remember what you would
look
like?
Well, that's the problem. I don't know. Like, some of the things I liked 5 years ago, I still like.
Well, then let's change the question if you can't reflect in that way. What was the experience like?
No. I mean, I see things that are different. The way I view the Bible and interact with the Bible and God has changed. Probably a year and a half ago, I started reading the Bible differently. It was basically because of you guys. When as we read the Bible, it's the context in which we read. And so even today, my question, the understanding is, I'm reading from the perspective of God, trying to understand what is he trying to communicate, as opposed to just reading stories and narratives and whatnot. Because with stories and narratives, you can get bogged down in the details. And we've said it. I've heard you guys say it, and so I've changed the way I've read the Bible, and that has helped my understanding. That has helped simplify things, not make it so cumbersome, not make it so detail oriented. Even though I think God is a very detailed God, as He's kind of shown in different ways. But so the way I view the Bible, the way I read it, the way I interpret it, the way I apply it, and then the way I converse with God, I think has all grown and changed.
What do you think about this as an experience?
This year?
The whole Water Fertility experience. What do you think about it? And what's your thought on it?
I like it. There are parts of me that I look at myself and was like, why do you like it? But there's something, because it's got people sitting around talking about their ideas and their thoughts and experiences and whatnot around the Bible. But every week I come, or when the weeks I come, I really, when I leave here and I'm driving back home, I'm like, man, I learned this, I learned that. And so that weekend, I think about it a lot. I'm even more, after I leave here, there are times I just go home and just get back in the Bible and read some more, just trying to understand. So for me, it kind of, it inspires me to continue moving forward, and staying in the Word. So it's almost like this milestone I hit. Even if the past couple weeks I haven't studied as much as I should have, my routine's been completely off. But even this as a mile marker along the way, it's you gotta read. At the very least, you gotta read just to show up.
Right.
Right. And even in that reading, you're getting something. It's oh man, you're bound. Why didn't you just keep doing it?
So as you say that was one of the things I was talking with Hugh about last week. That either it's a good thing or a very bad thing, but it's difficult to get engaged in this experience if you're not in the reading.
Yeah,
I know that was by design, but I've seen it be a barrier to some and a motivation for others.
Well, it's just like people in class. like, if you don't read the material in class, like, anything you add to the discussion is going to be solo suspect.
I was talking for more like, this doesn't allow or really afford for passive participation.
No.
So like, a casual person just landing on our conversations can't necessarily always just pick up and join in unless we, really debating something and then they're really caught in where's this debate going. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that was one of the things that I was able to reflect on through the experience, and I know it was a part of the design, but it makes me reflect a little bit on it makes me reflect on, is that barrier something that we need or something we need to modify or adjust? I was just thinking out loud.
No, I mean,
and that was just
that's just
like
rhetorical.
rhetorical.
Okay.
Rhetorical.
Really? That's what we're gonna use?
It's rhetorical. You think it's rhetorical? Oh. Okay. Interesting.
Shrika, anything you wanted to share?
The only thing I can say is that my ears are way more perked when I hear biblical things, just in general, talking to people. That's not how it like, and I gotta catch myself to not actually blurt that out, but more like, well, how did you arrive at that? And that's always been my struggle with a lot of people, where it's like they'll just regurgitate stuff, and before this experience I couldn't say yay or nay. I'm just like, okay, maybe I'll go home and look it up if I remember, but in the moment I'm like
so it's it's interesting. When we were in Rome, we were hanging out with some people, and we were walking by, and we saw the jail where Peter and Paul were in prison, and then this other lady was like, and not too far from here is where Jesus came when he was after the crucifixion, like not after the crucifixion, like but before his crucifixion, to meet with Herod. And people were like, "Oh, really? We have to go." And I was like, I was pulling out a map real quick. I was like,
not too far from here.
Jerusalem and Rome. And so, as you're saying that, like, and people were like, "Oh, we have to go," and I'm like, "Yo, like, you shouldn't go.
No,
like, that's not even a real place. Like, that was
She's
Jesus.
about to rob you.
She's
setting you up to take your money.
But
back alley somewhere.
When you said that, it's I don't know if that's necessarily water for the thirsty, but I do have you do realize you have a little bit more command of the Bible, and you can you're not as easily deceived when people say certain things.
Right.
That's a quick trip. Like, he got back though. Like, it's like the next thing. Like, it's not.
Can you share with us? Are you in a position to share with us one example of that?
Definitely. My most hated, and I'm not ashamed of it. I was gonna put a post about it, but I figured I couldn't find the right words. I have a lot of budding Christian friends. I say budding, not based on how long they've been in Christianity, but just on a
BUDD?
Budding,
okay.
Yes. But their biblical knowledge. And so I'll have some people just say, if it's on your heart, God wants it for you.
Cool.
And I was like, well, I'm not sure.
There are a lot of things on my heart.
Right. I mean, Jerry, the example that I use. It's not 9 o'clock, so I can't give y'all the example. But I was like, I don't think that was of God. But okay, and so I struggle with some sort of, I don't want to say rebuttal, but response, because it's like, well, I appreciate that you're trying to relate it back to something Christ-centered, but the logic is slightly flawed to me, and maybe I'm just not understanding what you're saying. And in the moment, I'm just like, I'm not sure, but okay, and if you're not, in my opinion, as told by Sharika, if you're not reading the Bible in the context by which the texts are meant to be read in, I think there are a lot of situations where something like that can take place. And it doesn't mean you mean harm. It just means, and I've seen it, we've picked it up somewhere, and it sounds good in theory, and it probably has some backing, but you're missing the context.
Right. Lorraine says hello. I don't know if you guys can see, but she says hello.
Hello.
She hasn't been on in a minute, so she said she's missing.
She's our t-shirt keeper.
Lorraine. Yeah, she's the one who's managing our t-shirt.
Yeah. I didn't know she hadn't been on.
No, yeah, I was just laying. That was her line. She said, "Happy Sabbath, you guys. Missed you all for a bit."
Yeah.
So she put herself out. Got that. Yeah.
Well, welcome back.
Let's dive in. Kenneth?
Show me what you got.
Let's see.
Are you reading the Psalms this year?
No. I'll try. I think I did it 2 chapters last year.
You know, my dad made me feel bad today about the Psalms.
Why?
He's like, Shriek, I've been reading at least 2 Psalms a day. What? He's like, yeah, and like I have this app, and it pokes me to do, to read, and so now I'm at.
Oh, Z says, tell Kendrick to speak up.
Oh. And he's like, now
Hey.
I'm at 41, and I'm like, dang, my dad's read more of the Psalms. See Proverbs again until next July.
All right, so
What you got?
Matthew 18 had a lot of stuff in there for me. My first thing is this, and this is it might be getting a little into the weeds, but I was just curious. Matthew 18, 7 through 9. I'll find it here so I can have multiplications. Yes, I'm getting my Jared on. He went to Jared. All right, so verse 7 says, "Woe to the world." So this is like after it's talking about like why you shouldn't tempt or cause children to stumble or little ones to stumble and whatnot. And it goes on, "Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. If your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes be thrown into the fire of hell."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now this is Jesus talking. Similar to when he's talking about, not necessarily at the same time, but he also talks about how if you lust is committing adultery, and if you hate is murder.
Right.
Right? How do you differentiate between hyperbole and literal?
Cut your arm off.
Because
Context.
right, because so cut your arm off or cut your eye off is almost the same of like, so if what you watch on television causes you to stumble, you should throw your TV out.
Correct.
Or you should throw your radio out or your phone or whatever that thing is.
Right.
That's literal.
That can be literal.
But this isn't literal.
You could just block the channel. You ain't got to throw the TV out.
Yeah, but the idea is to.
How do you determine?
There's no hard and fast rule that I am aware of, and maybe that's when like having a seasoned pastor
Hint, hint.
on the couch would be helpful for a question like this now.
That was a good one. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I thought you would.
It's a shot across the bow.
We see you too, because you's on.
Yeah. So, I would say that those are things you have to feel out through context. Yeah. The context wouldn't suggest that Jesus is literally telling people to go chop their hands and feet off.
But he would. But if it's doing something that it shouldn't do, he would. Because that's the thing. Like, yes,
I'm sure.
I think it's
there is an
reasonable to
instance-
think. I think it's reasonable to think that yes, Jesus wouldn't want you, and he's not saying to literally cut your leg off.
Right.
But if it's not your leg, right, and it's something else that's doing it, he's literally telling you probably should get rid of that.
I think it depends on your vice. Like, so for example, there are people out there. I'm one of those people that if the ice cream is open, I can finish the ice cream that's open. It could be another unopened one there. I don't feel as tempted to touch that one. I gotta finish the open one. Mm-hmm. Versus there are people out there who need to throw out everything. Like, they cannot even see it in there. Mm-hmm. And so if you're unable to not go to that channel, you took the TV for example, mm-hmm. then you need to get rid of the cable. Because if your vice is, or it's that strong of a temptation that you cannot resist the middle ground, then do what you have to do to get rid of it. Right. And I think that's where we're at with this is, if that's where you're at and there's no resist, then you got to do what you have to do. Now, cutting off your own arm could cause your own death, which in a way could be suicide, and that's not really what we're trying to go for. But I'm just simply saying it's more so the idea of, if you can't fight it, then get rid of it.
Get rid of it, yes.
Okay.
And be, not, I wouldn't say dedicated to the cause, but be determined about it. Be that determined to uproot it. Because if you're that determined to, like literally it's your hand. Mm-hmm. If you're really determined to get rid of it, you know, cutting off your hand will reveal that determination.
Sure.
Sure. So that's kind of why, you know, you would get that. Lorraine asks, so does that apply to people too? Just curious.
Yes.
So one says no, one says
I
yes.
just said yes because she said no.
Okay. Can you support
my yes?
Yes. Just for argument's sake.
Yeah.
From argument standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably are people that you shouldn't be around. That God necessarily probably didn't place in your path. That will cause you to stumble. I look at it from the perspective of when you get on a plane, like, as selfish as it sounds, you know, for you to don your mask in the case of emergency before you don your, you know, put your children's mask on, it makes sense. Like, two dead people can't relate. Like, that's not helping, and I can't trust I'm not trusting Layla to put my mask on. So, so you should take care of you, right? And so as you're kind of moving throughout, once again, it sounds selfish, but there's some people that will negatively affect you, and that might not necessarily be your calling to step in.
2 points. One, I think a lot of humans use the idea of cutting people off out of sheer laziness. They do not want to confront conflict and learn better communication. And I'm speaking for myself. I'll cut a person off because I just can't be bothered. I don't feel it's worth my energy. But then I turn around and say, God probably shouldn't be associated with me either, to be quite honest. He should cut me off. Mm-hmm. I'm not the best influence on that young man. You know? And so...
How young?
Jesus.
Okay.
And his 33-year-old.
Okay. I'm just...
I said God, bro. Like...
Cut this stream off.
So when I look at it that way... a lot of times if we sit back, 99.9% of the people you wish to cut off is because you're avoiding being the Christ-like person that God has even asked you to be and try. And this later on in the chapter, it talks about that, you know. And so that's why I'm like, no, you know, that's not how this works. and just because I may not be buddy with you doesn't mean that I'm, for example, Kenrick, if you and I catch in an argument, which even if we did, we get over it in like 2 seconds because we're just those type of people. Some people say, oh, I cut him off. I see him on the side of the road. I'm not even going to help him. No, that's not how this works. We don't have to talk again, but I'm going to call 311. I'm going to pull over, and I may not talk to you, but I want to make sure.
311, not 911?
No. I mean, it may not be an emergency.
Okay.
Like, you know, and I'm going to pull over, and I'm going to sit with you. Whether I talk to you or not, but you're still someone I know.
Sure.
You know, and people don't even give that courtesy. They'll just drive past and like, yo, I don't mess with that Kenrick no more, son. Somebody else will see him. So
I agree with you. That most people are lazy. Spiritually and in their relationships, to where they don't want to make the effort, even though God has probably placed them in there for that very reason, and not necessarily even to help them, just because you need to reveal some stuff within your character. So I do agree with that. I'm just not always a never guy. So there are times when you probably should cut somebody off, and go a different way.
I'm gonna agree with both of you and say, it depends on the circumstance. And I would tie in your two answers by saying you had to check with God first to know. He would be able to tell you whether this is a cutoff or a keeper, because he sent them.
And there may be a pause.
All that.
And actually, there's probably more pause than cutoff, because I don't think, to your point, because God doesn't cut people off.
Yeah, but you're not cutting them off because of something that the cutoff that we asked about, or that Lauren is asking about. Well, you know what? I'm assuming for Lauren, so let me not do that. But I assumed that the cutoff she was talking about was something else. Was more of a, because of the context of the conversation. It wasn't that those people are offending me, but in my attempt to be faithful, those people are contributing to my unfaithfulness. And those are two different types of cutoff.
Sure.
I would say even...
What, like, Lorraine, what does that look like? Like, what's an example of that? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's going to come in a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to come in. Yeah.
Even if this person is causing me to stumble, right? I still think it's more of a pause and a cut. Because Kenrick made a good point. It's revealing this. The person is probably not the stumble. It could be the act by which, or something the person has that's the stumble. And
stimulus.
It's a stimulus. It's a catalyst to me to do something. And once I get over this, I probably can be around this person again.
Correct.
Received.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. Sharika?
Same chapter. Funny enough. I've been having conflict lately. People conflict, right? I don't do.
Who was it again?
Sharika is having people conflict.
With who?
It don't matter. People.
Okay. So
More than one. Us. No.
Okay.
If we beefing, we beefing. Like, that's just what it is. I'm not that person. You're gonna know that. We're in conflict. But this chapter hurt. Because like even verse 15. If your brother sin against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. Boom, that's great. If he listens to you, you've gained your brother. Awesome sauce. But if he doesn't listen to you, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Wait a minute. This sounds very ambush-like, right? And so I can only imagine if I'm in my house, ding dong. First of all, don't come by my house if I ask you to come over. Second of all,
don't bring 2 church people.
Don't bring up 2 church people. Don't be bringing church people over to my house to tell me how I've sinned against you. But the concept is interesting when I got past the home invasion. Was that you're not giving up on each other. Like, you're stuck with each other. And if that is your homie, then that's your homie. And you do whatever you need to do to preserve your homie.
Until
the homie says...
So Lorraine, like, there's a cutoff.
Yeah, until the homie says, you know what? All the whole group of all it can
do something. But here's the thing. I will say this.
It's
Let's
not
say
9 o'clock yet.
Yeah, I was like,
right, not 9 o'clock.
It's 8:30.
I will say this, however, if your homie is in your circle, what I mean is both are trying to walk the Christian walk kind of circle. It probably will never get that far.
You'd hope.
I don't run with people
So what
like
is
that.
what is this?
I don't.
So what is?
I'm more likely to tell you all I can do something.
If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church, and if you refuse to listen to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Like, is that? I mean, are we really talking about that's like the board meeting where you?
Yes.
Like, I know they still do that,
Right, but
like,
these.
is this really expected or is this cultural?
So the idea is, if there's a issue, and when I say an issue where the person, because it starts with, if the brother or sister sins against you, so this person has done something
To you.
not just yes to you.
To you,
So this is a I've done something that hurt you, and I come to
defined something. Like there was something that is determined
Yes.
by everybody that this would be wrong
this
to
ha-
do to
correct,
you.
correct.
Not like your idea, like, oh,
Correct.
you said something, I was offended.
And that's clear because I came by myself to talk to you, and you didn't hear. Me and 3 other people. Now, if I go on to 3 other people and they had said, well, that's not really a big deal, then, they're not coming with me to address this issue.
Sure.
They would even, show me that
You're in the wrong. It's not worth it. Get over it. This too shall pass.
They would have
Whatever.
mitigated that when I
Exactly.
go to them. But if they are signing on now, just come and just say to you, you did this thing, and we want to try to make it right. And you're still not hearing from these other people who bring in other perspectives, who, kind of a little bit more objective about it. Because if it's me,
I'm biased.
I'm biased because you hurt me and I'm sensitive to it. But here are some other people who come in to, reveal this to you and ask you to try to make it right. And you saying, nah, they could go,
Who are these people?
These are other people who, because
Are
it's
they friends of the person that was offended? Are they like
people who are in relationship with the person.
With
who
both
was-
people?
With both people,
Okay.
yes. Yes.
So they have to be in relation with both people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm assuming that,
Well, I mean,
we're assuming that because it's talking about brothers. So, and it's in the,
my
in,
brother
the
or sister. Go, I got you.
in the assembly, the church.
Sure.
So it's like all of us, So if the 3 of us can't convince you that you did something wrong, and the whole church has signed on. When I say church, I'm talking about the whole congregation of people that you are in relationship with, because you are part of this community. And if you still holding on to that thing and saying, I'm not, it's at that point where you kind of like, well, if you continue to hold that position, you will mess up you poison this entire body of people. Or can be a poison to this entire body of people. We're not trying to just, bash on you and dump on you. We want to reconcile. The point of all of us here is reconciling, and you don't want to reconcile.
But even so, as I said, if me and you are true friends to the point we're looking at brothers and sisters, I cannot see that going that far. Like, what is our friendship if it's like saying all of us here, add Avanique, add OB, add Kim, Din, everybody sitting in the same line group, and a couple of stragglers, and we're like, Kendrick, you're wrong. You know what? I don't care. What? Are we friends? Like,
Well, no. It's like, but even if I guess my thing, I can look at my personality. Like, if I did that and Jared was like, yeah, I mean, I did it. I'd be like, okay, like, I'm not gonna go and get you and everybody else like, yo, we gotta talk to Jared because he did this to me and I want like.
No,
it's
so
not-
I think it's a difference. He's
the-
not. He's not admitting to fault.
Yes, I'm coming to reconcile. The person who's coming is coming to
To
reconcile.
reconcile, and you don't want to reconcile, even though you're the one who did the fault. You don't want to reconcile.
It's more than just
That's
saying,
what-
yes, I did it. It's, yes, I did it and I'm sorry.
Yes.
Or I did it because of this and this was the reason, and,
But I'm saying is, I don't think I would if I went to them and they still didn't reconcile with me. I'm not gonna go get anybody else.
Right.
You're just gonna leave it unreconciled.
Yes. Like, why would I bring other people in?
Well, I think what I think is happening here is the preservation of the community.
Correct. And
Correct. So
relationships.
so once it, so
the commitment to the relationships.
so this is something specific. Like, there are only certain things that this is going to be referring to. This isn't just anything that you're offended by.
Not everything should cause you to get... One thing I think some people are real...
There's nothing defined in here.
No.
And so people... So the reason why I'm pushing back is like, what does this look like? Mm-hmm. You know, is it if someone cusses me out? Or is it if, you know, the church finds out that you stole money from the church? You know, or swindled someone in the church? Like, what does it look like? Because I don't think this applies as a blanket statement to, you know, if you offend me. I think one of the things, like, if you go down in like 23 through 35, you know, there's another story that's mentioned, and one of the things I was like, you know, I don't know if Christians should really adopt the see something, say something mantra, because, you know, then it kind of gets crazy,
right?
As far as what people are in, and, you know, being in your business, and, you know, gossip and all this kind of stuff.
So one thing that
there
comes
has to be
mind,
some.
When I hear the way it reads to me, when you're saying your brother, your sister, in my opinion, when I think of my brother, him and I are in conflict at least 3 times a month, right? But it's something we can get over. It's something we can get past. This to me feels, because personalities will always clash.
Sure.
This to me feels like something that is
the
really,
person can't get over.
Right, like I just can't get past this,
I can't
and you
see
don't,
past you.
and you don't see why you've hurt me so much, and we're stuck. Like we're really stuck, and
every time I see you, I think about it. It won't allow me. It won't allow our relationship
to progress. And so now I'm realizing, you know what? I gotta face this head on, because I'm looking at you sideways. You might not even realize it, or maybe you do, and it's not helping us. So let's talk about this real quick. And if you still want to be sideways about it, now I'm like, well, I kind of miss my friend. And so maybe I'm going to call Jared and I'm going to call Vanessa to see if they can talk to Henrik, because I just want him to see that I can't, him not being,
and I get all of that. I just can't see it progressing to me having conversations in the church about them and then saying, because you did this to me and I can't get over it, you got to bounce.
So
I'm just trying to figure out.
I don't think the church is the biggest, as large as our church.
Correct.
Any church.
But to be fair, and I never thought of it before until Sharika brought it out, the idea here is a commitment to relationships. And it's layered safeguards in order to try and preserve relationships within a community. Mm-hmm. And so you are right. In most instances, it should be sufficient for the 2 of us to talk.
But I'm saying, that's my thing is, I want to be clear. I'm saying, I'm not necessarily counting on some type of resolution or reconciliation coming from that. And even if that doesn't happen, I'm cool. Like, we'll see what happens. Like, yeah, I'll pray for you.
But the commitment here is to reconciliation. To not leave anything without trying to. And
that's what the next verse says. What you bind up, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven.
It's really just a commitment to reconciliation.
Okay.
You really cannot be okay with having this issue.
Yeah, with leaving issues unresolved between people. At least I never thought of it that way until Sharika brought it up. But now that I'm reading it, yes, this, you know, the idea that I believe Jesus is presenting is we should be that committed to our relationships among each other as believers that we are committed to reconciliation, just like we're committed to cutting off our feet.
So this is not literal.
Yeah, well, it could be.
Because people use this literal.
Yes.
Literally.
I mean, it is a good approach. It's a safe approach.
Is it a safe approach?
It's like you
I don't know
it's
if
like,
that's
for
a safe
example,
approach.
when a marriage couple or married couple goes to counseling, you've entered 1 or 2 more people into this to give you an outside perspective of what this argument may or may not be.
Yes, but then you don't go and get people to come in, like larger group to come in and say, oh, you know, when you're going to counseling, you're not necessarily trying to hear somebody, you're trying to fix the problem but you're going to qualified people
most definitely
to fix the problem.
But I'm
not
going
to
way.
these people.
Let me look at it this way, though. For example, even the after show that we have, like, if you guys don't know, we be here till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, right? If one of us is beefing and Jared can't fix it, I would see it perfectly acceptable. Be like, yo, B, yo, Shonice, the original group. Can y'all talk about this? This don't mean we bringing in RPC's regular cast of whatever. It's a group of people who are already friends. These are brother and sisters in the same group, and 2 are in conflict.
I can get all that. I probably wouldn't do that, but I can get that. What I don't get is how that progresses to where we are in conflict and it's not necessarily affecting other people because you're having to bring other people in.
It is affecting other people.
You did something to me or I did something to you. We can't work it out. We then have to go.
You're affecting me because if I have a line, I gotta choose which one of y'all to pick because y'all not getting along.
But what I'm saying, but no one necessarily. I'm saying not necessarily. I'm saying, but there's no one here that's necessarily affected by our beef.
Yes, we are.
We then go and get people.
No, I go and get people.
Or you go. Who I'm saying, go and get people to bring, and now that creates more people.
Said, Jewel, can you help me understand where Kendrick is coming from?
Yes.
No, it may not be even that. So, for example, if he sees me and be like, "Yo, Shrika, what's up?" Just got a lot on my mind, son. What do you mean by we got? And Jared will pressure something down to me. This happens all the time, and eventually it comes out that Kendrick and I are in dispute. Saturday night, if Jared wants to say, "Yo, everybody lying," well, and I don't know if I can bring Kendrick and Shrika. Therein lies the problem. I gotta figure out how to solve this because this is messing up the whole lot. Because if I don't have both of them, where's Kendrick?
Okay. So he brings you in, right?
Right.
And we talk about it, and I still don't change.
Correct.
Then what happens? You go to the larger body and was like, "Yo, do you bring more people in?"
Right.
And I still don't change.
Now we get rid of you.
And then you get like that doesn't make like the end doesn't make sense to me. I get the process.
Here's why you get rid of the person. And you only get and it's a pause. You are no longer committed to reconciliation. Because you have all these people showing interest on you two getting back together and you don't want to. I mean, and that's not going to foster well for the community.
It's the same thing with God. If you continue to turn away if you continue to harden your heart, at some point, not that he leaves you, but you're basically saying, "I'm good to go."
I get that. What I'm saying is, I don't know if everybody needs to be involved.
You just want to exit stage left on your own?
Yeah, just like, or just like, part of actually my issue. Like, get over it, dog.
Z has been chiming in, right? But I couldn't find a space to bring her in until she used this phrase.
What form is she in?
She's on live.whatever.dc.com. She said, "But when you bring others, aren't you running the risk of being judgmental towards this brother or sis?" And then she adds this contextual line. "Jared, think about Jerk Chicken Dude."
Yo, it's a whole different argument. Jerk had to go. Like, he had to go. He had to go.
But again, it's about the reconciliation. I would argue, and if Jerk Chicken Dude, I'm sorry, I can't give more context than that. If he was
in a position to reconcile,
willing to reconcile,
he could still come down.
He could
come back in line.
As long as the two parties had reconciled, they could
coexist. It's fine.
So that's my thing. So my that goes to my point. My point is that this isn't for church. We use this only in the context of a church because of the way it's given. You're using this as an example that has nothing to do with church, and the overall idea and thought is reconciliation.
So the challenge that you're bringing up is a challenge of language and understanding. Jesus is talking about relationships among people who call themselves believers. That technically is what a church is. Mm-hmm. However, we've redefined church to our formal institutional
organization.
Setting. Correct. So he's not necessarily saying, because people didn't formalize in this sense, and even in Jesus' time, because there was no real church at that point, right? So when Jesus is saying this, he's definitely not talking about what we understand church to be, because there's no church like that at his time. But the word church actually means assembly, which means people who come together or are part of a group or a community, right? So it is about preserving relationships within a community.
Which is why he likens it to treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector.
Correct.
He didn't say pagan, he said Gentile.
Well,
Pagan is
he
a
said
Gentile.
pagan.
A Gentile is a pagan. They're synonymous. It's just different words for the same thing. And here's why.
Heathen man.
A heathen, and it's from a Jewish perspective.
Heathen.
If you don't
okay.
worship
All
God,
right, I got
the
you.
true
I
God, you're
got you.
yeah.
I got you. I was like,
Yeah. Then it says Gentile.
okay.
Tax collectors the same everywhere.
Tax collectors, I get the tax collector piece.
Tax collectors are Jews.
But not only that, but you scorn them, like you side-eye them. You be like,
Yeah, so if we all in community and you refuse to be committed to the reconciliation to preserve the community, you know, we can't really have any community.
You're messing up the line.
And I'm saying this not just on the when it's just me and you. When the whole community comes and says, Kenrick, we need to work this out.
You really not gonna work this out?
We need to restore this relationship. What can we do to restore this relationship? And you sitting down saying, I ain't never restoring this relationship. You can't have that in a community. I mean, I guess you could.
But it's not what's supposed to happen.
But restoring the relationship just means that I have to own up to what I did wrong.
No.
So that's my
It can involve that, but sometimes you might feel justified in what you did, and you may have expectations in the future of how to avoid these kinds of things.
because that doesn't seem like what this is saying.
But there's also a lot of people who are who know they were wrong, but just don't want to admit they're wrong. Like there's that stubborn nature of, because you're coming. Had you left me alone, I would have said okay. But because you're coming for me, I am just going to just be bad mind and not want to reconcile.
Correct.
Fair enough, but even in there's some instances where you perceive that I did you wrong, but my motives were different than you perceived. But once we reason, because I'm committed to the relationship and committed to hearing what you're saying, and I explain to you what's going on, if we're both committed to the relationship, there's a middle ground that we can get to when we're both committed to it.
So that's an added layer of context that I've always read. When I've read this, I have never read that into it.
Sharika brought it tonight. I never got that either.
I read this as a specific thing that you did to me, right? And I'm offended by it, and because I'm offended by it, I'm gonna come to you about this specific thing, not necessarily in the context of our relationship, just because you did this to me. Right?
But the word brother is suggesting
that there's a relationship.
No, I'm saying there is a relationship, but I'm not coming to you because of this overall. I'm coming to you because you offended me about this particular thing. I could be fine with you on everything else. I'm saying, yo, what you said yesterday offended me. And here is like, well, I meant that. Like, I always got like, this is an apology, this is repentance, this is all this type of thing that comes along with it.
Yes.
What you're saying is, you may not get, within this context, you may not get the I'm sorry. You know, you might get the I'm sorry I offended you.
Yes.
You know, I didn't mean to offend you.
Correct.
Right? I'm not necessarily sorry for what I said.
But I didn't mean to.
But I didn't mean to hurt you.
But even in that,
that's reconciliation. For you, that's reconciliation.
No, but I'm saying, but
that's
even
I don't
in
think
that,
that's what.
Even in that, just that dialogue is us working towards reconciliation. Because now because I want to reconcile, and you are saying, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings. Not, I'm sorry for what I did. We still are dialoguing towards reconciliation.
And if we're being honest, and we say in jest, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, because a lot of times people use that as a means to not say sorry. But I think there is some genuine nature in who says it and how they say it. So for example, I may know the type of person you are, and what you said you really meant. Mm-hmm. You didn't mean for my feelings to be hurt by it, but it doesn't negate the fact of what you said.
Correct.
So you acknowledging, I didn't mean to hurt you, but you want me to say sorry that I said it. I'm not sorry I said it. I'm sorry that it was received that way. And let me tell you why. That is very much almost at wreck, because I have to respect that you are who you are. And I think a lot of people don't want to... They're looking for you to negate who you are. And it's like, no, I'm saying I said it for a reason. Reconciliation doesn't mean sorry. Reconciliation is, I understand where you were coming from. You understand where I'm coming from. And we're both willing to put it behind us and go forward.
Or at least
what's the word for sins here?
We have to look it up.
I guess that's what I'm getting caught up, like hung up on. Like
you got the
sins.
10 Commandments and seeing which one you get.
No, I'm saying sins like if your
What's the
brother
verse?
sins against
What's the
you.
specific verse? Matthew
Matthew 18:15.
15. It's trespass in the King James Version. To miss the mark, to err, to be mistaken, to miss a wander from the path of righteousness, of honor, to go and do wrong, to wander from the law of God,
So that's
to
what-
validate God's law of sin.
So that's my thing. Like this is something that was done wrong.
Right. Or at least perceived to be done wrong.
Perceived to be done wrong. Same context. It might
Same
be.
thing.
No.
Same thing.
No, it can't be.
Bro, if you step
If
on
I
my
did,
figures,
if I say something to you, right, that probably needed to be said, it just didn't need to be said the way I said it,
how you said it is wrong.
or how I
yes.
said it,
Right.
right? That's not necessarily me sinning against you.
Yeah, because
That's
you missed the mark.
I missed the mark of what?
You
You
missed
should
the
have
said
said
it
it better.
different. You said it better.
You should have
You
said
missed
it
the
better.
mark.
You messed up.
You missed the mark.
No.
There's a bullseye on how to say things when you need to say them.
So
And you
now,
missed the mark
now
on
the way I have to say it, and that's a sin against somebody.
No, the
Like that doesn't make any sense.
so
You need to
what
be
what
cognizant.
meaning of sin are you imposing on
the
the word
one
sin?
right there,
No, but that was a very broad.
Righteous-
So the
That's-
word the
which
word
is my
the word
point.
the
Like,
word
what
that-
is the sin here?
So the word that's translated sin there is akin to a bullseye on a wall, and you not hitting it, or you're not hitting it exactly. You're not hitting it dead center, and so it's used in that context as well. And so, I know we have spiritualized sin in that context. So if you use this word just from
I'm looking at it from a wrong.
this person
You wronged
if this
me.
person made a mistake,
I felt you wronged me.
me. Yes, I felt you missed the mark. I felt you
Not-
erred. I felt you made a mistake. I felt you
Right.
fell short.
That changed the entire concept of what this thing is.
But that's what that word means. I know what sin means for us.
From a spiritual context, but the word itself, by its definition,
The way it was used.
even in
then.
that, even if it was even in a spiritual context, my sin is still a missing of the mark. God expects this, and I fall short.
I don't.
And it's all relational.
I can't necessarily co-sign on that one
Why? Because I'm sure somebody else can't co-sign as well.
because it's.
I'm sure Z can co-sign as well.
yeah.
I understand the relationship part of it, but there's some relationships that like, the person may not have. They may be at a deficit for really understanding where they are in this particular situation. So anything you say could offend them and come out.
Right, but remember, when you bring the two people in, there's a perspective to say, yo, Jared, you sure you ain't going through something else while you took that way? That's how Kenrick always talks. What's the underlying issue here? So it's not just to come for Kenrick. It's to look at the situation in its whole and say, are you looking at this the way he's saying it? Because it looks like you may have been a little, you know.
And to Sharika's point, it's not just on the person who did the wrong who's working towards reconciliation. The person who was wrong also has to be working towards reconciliation for this to work. If the other person is just coming at you because they're coming at you, then this is not what they should be doing. They're coming because they want their friend back. They want to heal this thing. They want to resolve and move forward. They're not just coming because they were offended.
Sure.
They're coming to let you know they were offended so that they can move beyond. And that's to me, that's the light on this that was missing from my reading it the whole time before that Sharika has brought today. The commitment to reconciliation by all parties, the wronged and the person doing the wrong.
Okay.
And showing that the person who's done and even though it's coming from that angle, because it assumes the person who was wronged is coming for relationship and not out of bad mind or spite, just to ride you. that's kind of how it enters. That's why the onus seems to be on the person who's doing the wrong to meet halfway in the reconciliation.
Lorraine says not only that, but I think the two would also be coming to hear both sides to see if there really was wrongdoing.
She said, "I'm with Kenrick," but that was before my thought, so I don't.
No, that's your
I don't know if
thought.
she's still there.
You're still
She
there,
said,
Z.
I just wonder if it depends on what the person did to you, because there are just certain things you can't to
You're some
others,
sensitive thugs, man. They all need hugs.
as you might embarrass the other person.
But even if you're sensitive, right? People at this couch right now may not be the most sensitive people to have this conversation, right?
Definitely not.
There are sensitive people, but I also know when I'm dealing with a sensitive person and I decide to be straight savage Sharika, I know I hurt their feelings. Like, this is not asking the question.
Sometimes they need it.
I'm not saying that I regret saying it. I'm simply saying they may have needed to hear the cutthroat. Now, if next week they still on it, Dave, you still on this thing? All right, fine. Let's come talk about it. Like, you're supposed to be over that by now. But okay, fine. Let's talk about it. I still meant what I said.
You give your, I'm sorry you're offended.
Yeah, I said what I said, but I probably should have said it differently, knowing the type of person you are and knowing how you would have received it. When I said it,
that is a commitment to reconciliation.
And are you doing it to preserve the relationship?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
because the next week you still upset at me, like, yo, why you still upset? Oh, because are you serious? All right, fine, let's talk about it.
And you have that dialogue. And we don't need to call Z yet,
No.
because you all had that dialogue. The only reason to call Z and Avanique is because after you guys have dialogued, you still being a Richard.
Don't call nobody.
You still
Don't
upset? Be upset.
don't bring nobody, man. Yo, if it don't work out, just pray that it works out. Like, you just keep that between you and God, because He changes things.
Are you gonna read what Lauren says?
I read it.
Oh, you read the second part?
What you say?
I didn't get the second part.
She says, well, I'm gonna read the whole thing because there's a full thought in two parts. I agree, Sharika. If we are both of like mind, then we will do our best to resolve it in a way that will be pleasing to God. I can't see it going that far. Not only that, but I think the two will be coming to hear both sides to see if there really was wrongdoing. I'm going to see if
Depends on who the two are, man.
At least for me, for Sharika, my closest compadres, in the years that I've been alive, we've never needed. We can fix it. We choose not to fix it. You know, like we need time to let it fester and let it simmer or whatever. But eventually, you miss your friend, or you're just okay, it is what it is.
I believe you let the sun set on anger.
you believe in letting it set.
And letting
I
it
don't
set,
believe that.
and then you wake up in the morning, it's a new day, and you figure it out then.
I believe in letting you
Let
know.
time go.
I believe in letting you know that I'm not dealing with this today, and that we can pick this up tomorrow. But I'm not okay with not saying anything at all.
No. We'll still be cool. I'll still say hello. Like, everything's cool.
The second part of this, and this is why I think it's because of where I am right now, is Matthew 22, verse 39. I guess I should start with 37. And he said unto them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You should love your neighbor as yourself. You know how hard it is to love somebody like I love me? You know how selfish I am in general? Your whole idea of sin is to maintain self and selfishness. And you're asking me to take that same amount of self-love and throw it at a human that is not attached to me? Please and thanks. No, thank you. That, right, I've never read it
know
in
what
that.
loving yourself is.
What do you mean? What you do every day and choose not to follow God is love of self. That's all it is.
I guess.
And so,
I don't look
basically,
at it that way.
I am the amount of
I
energy
just
that
do it.
Well, yes.
Like
it's natural to you.
I'm not doing. Yeah, I'm not like. Oh my god, I love myself.
you're picking,
I'm
but you're
this.
picking
No.
yourself. You're just picking yourself. You're picking what you want.
Yeah.
So
It's seeking your own best interest.
I'm literally supposed to seek your interest more than.
No,
What?
the same.
Just as mine. Just like
The same.
mine. The same as mine. The
So
same as I would for
so
myself.
it'd be,
I'm not doing you
so
more.
technically, it's me and you and then God, because that's how I live my life. Unfortunately,
Correct.
most days.
It's me and you and then God.
I mean, if you put it in its literal terms.
But if you're not doing that, then you're
it's
actually putting God.
flipped. It's God and then me and you.
No, I know. What I'm saying is, in your sinful world, it's
correct. It's me and you and then God.
and then God.
No, because if you're loving your neighbor as yourself, you're doing what God asked you to do.
Which
so
means
you're
actually
moving, you're
Depends on
actually
which one of
doing-
my neighbors, because I could kill one and then love you.
That's why the question was, and who is your neighbor?
Yeah.
Right. You know, it
It's
depends on.
the parable of the Samaritan.
Yes.
Who should I love like that? Yeah.
So yeah, that I read that and I was like, dang, homie. Yeah, I don't love anybody like that. So sorry, Mom.
I wanted to
There's that.
I wanted to ask a question about the thing in Isaiah. I'm going to transition us. Isaiah 48, 9 to 11.
I actually read a lot of Isaiah. I haven't read the last couple of these. 48.
Yeah, Isaiah 48. So in this chapter,
The Father himself.
God is saying, he starts talking to the people of Israel, calls them by like 3 different names. He's addressing them. He's talking about what he was doing to them or what he's done for them, to them and for them. And then he says in verse 9, for my own name's sake, I delay my wrath. For the sake of my praise, I hold it back from you, so as not to destroy you completely. See, I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. So I've given you hard times. For my own sake, I do this. How can I let myself be defamed? I will not yield my glory to another. And I started to process. I know this is specific to this instance, but I started to wonder, is everything that God does for his sake? And that's not necessarily a bad thing if it is. But how does that, if that is the case, let's say that is the case, how does that change how I see him if it's never about me and always about him?
Do the two have to be mutually exclusive?
I don't know. That's why I wanted to process with you guys.
I don't know if they have to be. I think that God is big enough as the creator of all. He can be doing it for him and me. It's interesting here where I think he's very clear on like this is yeah, I'm not doing this for you anymore. Like
I was never doing
the
it
fact
for
I'm
you.
saving you and I'm not completely destroying you. Please don't. Actually, don't thank me. Like, this is not for you. This is clearly for me because I have to preserve. There's something else that's got to happen, and I need you guys.
2 things come to mind. Like, people hate when I say this, especially Sherry.
She's not
she
on.
on?
She's not on.
Dang it, call her. Text her. Get on right now.
This brings me back to how I really do see the personalities of God differently. God the Father's, in my opinion, and what I understand in our relationship, his take on mankind is a little different than Jesus the Son.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the Father is saying, I'm at the top of this thing, right? I got mad other worlds and even other people on earth that I could be chasing for my own sake, for my own kingdom, my own reign, my own omnipotence. I gotta keep you. Cause guess what? You're not that important. You're important, but not important enough for me to risk
But you're just
the whole
important.
thing.
You're important to the story. Like,
Right.
I need the story to continue.
You're
and
a pawn on my chessboard.
Yeah, you're facilitating.
And so therefore, please understand that if you think this is for you, I could knock you off. I just don't feel like it. And that doesn't bother me whatsoever because that's very, in my opinion, fitting for the Father. The second part of me says, it is kind of true. Like, I remember Jared told me once, Rika, you're important, but you're not that important. Right? You're just not, right? I was having a moment. And
Did I see that?
yeah, you did. I feel like I screenshotted it or something. So I was like, did he just tell me I'm not
Is
that
there any
important?
reconciliation?
Like,
Clearly. Well, we'll wait to hear what you say before we bring anybody else in.
And it was very eye-opening. It was a very eye-opening experience because it was just like, wow, you're right. Like, the world doesn't stop because of what I may or may not do. It doesn't stop rotating. Nothing. And here he's like, you're important, but you're not that important. Like, don't get it twisted. And if more of us saw ourselves as just,
We're not that important. That's actually, we should actually promote that.
you're not that
Just
important.
Put on a t-shirt, Lauren.
You're not that important. Yeah, you're not that important.
Because I
You're
think
important.
a lot of,
But not that important.
even if you think of the mindset of Israel,
You got it, Lauren?
you're not that.
No, but you have to put you're important.
But you're not that.
But not that important.
If you think of the mindset of Israel, they.
I'm going to use that to my kids.
I can preach it that one.
I'm going
But not that
to
important.
give that to my kids as soon as I get home.
Right? No, seriously. If you think about the mindset of Israel back at this point, they felt like God needed to give them everything because, oh my gosh, you took us out of Egypt and you made my life a living hell. And they just kept going on and on and on. It's like, yo, for real, y'all are this small in the large thing. I'm trying to work with y'all, but at any given point, y'all can go to. Like, I can go make my kingdom somewhere else. I can just. And in the context of which you said it to me, which I've never forgotten, it was like, sure, the world still goes on. So if you want to sit here and carry on, please do. But we're going this way. And so catch up when you're ready. We're still going.
Because God's going to achieve it no matter what.
Exactly. And so it's like, you're important, but
Not
that important.
That's a hot one. That's a good one. Avinic says, yeah, I found that real interesting too. The for his own sake part. Makes me realize it's way bigger than I am. There's a grand plan and it doesn't end with me. So here's where I was struggling with it. Because he says his mercy was for his sake.
Mm-hmm.
He delayed his wrath. But then he also said the affliction, the testing in the furnace was for his own name's sake. So the good things he allows, or the punishment he holds back that I don't deserve, he gives me. And the things that he allows me to suffer through are all about him. So as I process my life and the things I'm experiencing, a lot of us want to know, why am I experiencing this? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I going through this? Why, or we experience something and we think it's something about us that God has, blessed us with this and blessed us with that and provided this and provided that, or kept this from us, and I didn't get any accident, and God is good because he cares about me. And then he could sit back, what does it do to my relationship with God if he sits back and says, well, nah, it was really for my own name's sake?
Didn't do anything to mine.
And is that a sufficient answer to the question when you ask why? For my name's sake.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you feel less, or doesn't make it seem like God is a little bit about him.
No. I mean, he says it.
But I don't know if it's for his name's sake.
For his own praise.
Like his own praise, but it's
the sake of his praise.
I can't look at it as God giving himself praise. Right? He's not doing it for that. He's still doing it so that other people can see. It's just not for you. Right? They can still go back and look, and you may, he's saying, don't come and think like this has nothing to do with you, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. And so when you're going through your affliction, or you're going through amazing things or terrible things or whatever, yeah, there are times when it actually has nothing to do with you. Like your blessing has nothing to do with you doing anything. It may be simply because they're, and to Sharika's point, that you're not important. Like, I exist, right? And we have connection. But then you exist with somebody else and this whole nother thing. And you exist with this whole, and then we have people that overlap. And so there's still people that see, and there's different vantage points based upon contact and interaction and all that kind of thing, that they may be seeing something, that I'm not paying attention to, and I would never have that perspective or understand that they're seeing me in that perspective. But God's saying, listen, you know, yes, you got this, or you were dealt this hand. This has nothing to do with you. This is for me because I need them to see me.
I was thinking about it from the standpoint of, if that becomes the answer, you know, to why, for his own name's sake, and whatever he just determined that to be, because he doesn't give you any more than that, except that it has to do with something about him. How do you then communicate to someone who doesn't really know God, and you want to share this good news with them, that he's interested in them? Because, you know, Sharika, you wrestled with that. He's up there far away, and he's not, seems to be not so interested in me. If it really has nothing to do with me, then why would I be interested in?
So the one thing that came to mind, we were watching Ty.
At least that's where my brain started to go as I was processing it all the way to its conclusion.
We were just watching Ty Tribbett and that Victory Live, where I'm with Vanessa. That man on something. We don't know what it is, but it's on something. Anyway, he has a group of singers
Holy Spirit
with him. No, that ain't.
No, it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, there's something. That, you gotta watch the video.
Coke.
Listen.
We didn't say all
We
of
didn't
that.
say what it was. We just said something.
I mean, it's not the Holy Spirit. It's got to be Coke.
It could be caffeine pill. You don't know what it is. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, he has like 12 or 13 people singing with him. It's Ty Trippett and them. Like, I don't know who the "and them" is. But in practice, he's making sure you're doing the same breathing exercises and you're holding up and you're staying in line because you signed up for this. I care that you don't pass out on this stage. But please understand, this is Ty Trippett and them. Like, no, like this. I mean, that's just what it is. And that's how I'm looking at it with God. Like, I want you to keep going. I'm concerned that you can still dance and keep going and sing and but this is Jesus and them. You signed up for my team. You didn't sign up for Sharika and Jesus' team. You signed up for my team. This is my team. And so therefore, this is about me. I want you to be okay because you got to play on my team. Need good players.
And I care about my players.
And I care about my players.
I care about my team.
But if you get a couple boxes here and there, that's not because I don't love you. You just got to take that right now because this is what it is. You know, and that's how I'm seeing it.
I got you.
But that was the problem Satan had. This wasn't God's team. It was Satan and God's team. He's like, nah, chill, this is my team.
But it's hard to have that conversation out of context.
No, Jared told me straight up that I
no, yours was very much in context of your life.
I'm just saying, like, when it first hit, it wasn't.
But that is, I mean, it's true though. You're not that important.
You're
not you, just in people. Like all of you are not that important.
When you realize what you signed up for, and that's one of the reasons why I have a problem with a lot of people and their interpretation of prosperity on earth, their interpretation of desires of your heart and things of that nature. It puts a very high importance on your desires and your needs.
And sure.
Yeah.
I look at like celebrities that die, like Aretha Franklin dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's upset and crying and all this kind of stuff. Now, one of these people knew her. Like,
Jared, you saw my message.
And I was like, so I'm like, yes, it's sad that someone died, but like, yo, but you didn't like her. You didn't like her for her. Like, go to Tidal and put the joint on, and she's
play
back.
For the rest of your life.
She's back.
Like,
so my thing is like, I'm saying all that to say, like, even as I know you can write all comments to.
No, but
Jared.
I said it to you the same day.
She did.
But as big of a celebrity she is,
She did.
I think they announced like on the 30th her funeral is gonna take place. On the 31st and the 1st, like people are back to regular thing. Like,
Did not happen.
Not saying that like her family like won't miss her or whatever, or miss the funding or whatever it is.
But we're going forward.
But like everybody else, like I got a meeting on the 31st.
Right.
Like I'm not. This doesn't stop.
No,
we're
going.
To the point of like you're only so important. Like God's view of this thing. Like if something were to happen to you, like He's still gonna. Last thing, I remember Janet Newfield, I hope I can say it, was talking about a church that was being started, and she was like, God wanted them to start that church, and she said like they dragged their feet, like things weren't going, and then eventually it died off. It's like 2 years later, a church started in that same exact place by other people.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. You're only so important. And then at some point, if you don't do, you gotta get off the pot, because God's gonna put somebody else in that position.
So my note to myself when I read it was, it's not about you. It involves you, but it's not about you. And I just, at first it seemed like a fair statement to make, but after a while as I was processing it, it seemed a little cold.
That it's not about you?
Well, not that it's not about you, but if it's not about me, in my own human mindset, then you didn't really care about me. It's all about you. That's one way that thought process can play out. If it's not about me, then you don't really care about me.
But this wasn't.
I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying that's what it.
Sure.
You can follow that thought process.
Yes, and I was wrestling with even saying this because he does care, but Sharika kind of gave me some context to help me bring it together. This is his team. I'm a player on his team, and as a player on his team, he does care about me.
Correct.
But everything that he does, even in his care about me, is preserving his team and the integrity of his team and his name.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's kind of, thank you for that, Sharika.
You're welcome. I've started the right. That's 2 this one.
That I was actually just thinking the same thing. I'm like, damn, that's 2 of them.
You're 5, man.
I haven't been.
I'm about to make sure these get my
I haven't
graduation.
been here. I haven't been here long. Like this has never happened before.
That's 4 years. 4 years.
Jeez,
You got that
you graduated. That's your diploma.
Put a little tassel on the other side.
I don't have anything off the top right now.
Okay.
Anything else?
Sharika?
Nah, I was getting killed in Matthew with the same old thing. Just kind of getting shot. Every chapter. Just getting shot.
Shot with the same thing? With the same idea?
The same mentality. I did have a short conversation with someone on Matthew 4:24, but I just, for anyone who wrestled with that, get out of your own head. Yeah, all I can say is get out of your own head.
Matthew 24?
Yeah,
24
just the whole chapter. Like it's a lot, right? All I can tell you is just get out your own head. Like, and take it for what it is and keep moving. Because that's all I had for the person that was talking to me about it. I was just like, get out of your own head. Take it for what it is, keep moving.
I don't even know if that's a Bible study lesson. Like, you can't even.
I mean, what else was I supposed to say?
I mean, probably not that.
What you mean? That is completely.
That's a good t-shirt too. Lauren, write that one down too. Get out of your own head, because you have to read in context.
Just take it for what it is.
Yeah,
like, that's just what it is.
That's good. I like that one too.
I mean, honestly, if you could lose your mind over Matthew 24.
Sure.
And the person was trying to get me to get insane with them, and I'm just like, okay, this right here, this is what we not going to do. Not doing this. You get out your own head. It's not as, and I'm gonna say it as an Adventist. It ain't as deep
for the whole thing, the entire chapter.
I'm gonna tell you.
Just so for clarity, are you saying like there actually shouldn't be a 24?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying 24 can steer you down a path by which you lose focus on relationship, and you are simply looking like just a excavator, just looking for stuff. Like, you're just looking. And so because of that, I'm saying take it for what it is. Get out of your own head.
I look. You give me a moon that turns a little red.
It happened already.
I know. No, I'm just saying.
All the time.
Right.
No, that's what I'm saying. You see me one, and I was like, I'm gonna come back in like 20 minutes. See if it gets a little darker. But it's not. I mean, that's what. I always do it. I see a shoot. I saw a shooting star the other day, and I was like,
Did fall.
Anywhere else? Nothing else is like it's
We're good.
None else? Okay, cool. I'm gonna give it 20 minutes and come back and see if they're still there.
You know,
Like it's that.
but then that brings you to the point of living in the fear instead of the relationship.
Sure.
And that's why I'm like, get out of your own head.
But there's a reason why he's there. Like, I get the relationship, and believe me, I'm there. But there's a reason why these things exist. Like, he's pointing to something. Like, there's an alarm that should go off.
Here's the thing. I believe there's an alarm that should go off. But I truly believe somewhere in translation, we've missed a piece of this. This is my personal
Well,
opinion.
it's not even just that.
I'm not arguing
The
that. I'm just saying.
disciples asked 2 questions, and they got answers to both questions. And whoever wrote this, in their estimation, both things are one and the same. All right, because let's go back to the top of the chapter. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came to him and called attention to its buildings. Do you all see all these things? He said. Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen?
And what?
And what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age? They assumed in their question that the things he's talking about was the coming of the end of the age. Jesus now, as Matthew recalls it, answers both questions. And he doesn't necessarily answer them linearly. You know.
Yeah.
But he answers both questions. And so, if you ain't sure which answers for which question,
Therein lies your excavation.
you could be in problems in understanding what he's saying.
No, I've never thought about that one.
And he's not making it easy for them either.
Because when the temple was torn down,
Right.
but that wasn't the sign of the coming of the end of the age,
That was just what's going to happen.
which is what he talked about.
Right.
And there were things in here that he says that was related specifically to when all of those things stones are going to be turned down. But there's also things, as Kendrick pointed to, alarms that should go off for the signs of the coming of the end of the age. We can't blend them together necessarily.
Well, you can't blend them together, and then you also time is like love to me, right? And me and Jewel have this argument all the time because she's like, there are days like she's like, I don't think you love me as much as I love you. And I'm like, but what is love? Like, is it 100 loves compared to 60 loves? Like, I don't know how many love. Like, what is like? And it's kind of like time. Like, there's 6,000 years. If this stuff happens in the last 1,000 years, like that's the end, but it's still 1,000 years. When my lifetime's only, God saying I'll give you 70.
Like you said, well, as you say that, I just realized now that that's 3 questions.
What's that? I only saw 2.
When will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming?
And
the end of the
age.
age. Unless you assume all of those things are the same thing. And are they the same thing? Do they happen at the same time? Do they happen maybe, possibly. But like you said, with the time,
you don't
really know.
It doesn't make, yeah.
And if Jesus is spouting stuff off, and I'm not saying that he's not answering the question, but if he's spouting stuff off and he's not saying it linearly, and Matthew is recording it,
just reporting as I hear it.
or he remembers it,
Or remembers it, yeah.
and maybe even he understood it to be all the same thing.
Get out your own head and take it for what it is. Because you're going to be excavating instead of building relationship. This is why we even have
is there value?
1844.
Yes, there is value.
So taking what Sharik is saying, what's the value? Or is there no value in what Sharik is saying?
I would say the value is verse 32.
Is there value in what you're saying?
Do I think 24 has value?
No, you're saying 24 exists.
Right.
Just don't read too much into it.
Right. Because,
But
and I'm saying it, you can't read much into it because we don't have enough to tell the full story, is what I'm saying. So I didn't break it down the way Jared...
At least not in the chapter.
Right. What I mean is, I didn't break it down the way Jared broke it down, but there are many things being answered here, and they're not necessarily going in order. And so, therefore, the amount of time you're going to take and the limited knowledge that you have and no historical context, you were not there, to try to piece which ones go with which, and you have no way to prove or disprove your hypothesis, it is not worth the time.
Right.
It has purpose, it's just not worth the excavation. There's no way for you to prove or disprove your theory, and your cousin may have another one. Anyone could have their theory on this.
Sure. No, I get it. So if we're taking that, then how do we move forward?
Next chapter. 25. Man, I've seen the sun darken. Man, I've seen stars fall out the sky. Oh, man, I've seen tribes of the earth mourn.
No, man, I'm not sure that we could just skip it. I was not advocating for that.
Which is why I wanted to see, like, where we...
That's how
where
we the mind that I have, it makes... I didn't say skip. I said read.
But I must stay with you in relationship and go to verse 32. Because I think that is the key. There
32.
are 32 and 33.
Got you.
Now learn this lesson from a fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves comes out, you know that the summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door.
Nope, I won't even take that.
And here's what I'm saying. I'm saying
25.
the idea with, and I'm gonna use winter instead of summer. Or you could use it. I just winter for me is
coming. Really?
No, that's not what I meant.
Okay.
That's not what I meant because I don't even follow that.
Okay.
I'm aware of the term, but I don't follow it.
I don't either. That's why I was wondering if you were okay.
I'm talking about my own experience, right? Particularly in this area where winter is not like it is in Canada. And some days it's be mild and some days it's be cold. And if you don't prepare properly, you could be... Was it 9 o'clock? You could be tail out.
It's 9:29.
You could be tail out because you thought you had more days than you had.
Sure.
Right? So all you walking outside is with your sweater over your clothes because for the last 3 days, this temperature stay in the 60s. And tomorrow you wake up and it's 40 degrees outside and you don't have a jacket. But you knew winter was coming. You could see it. You could see the leaves falling. You could see the things happening around you, and you didn't prepare. And to me, that is what for me the major takeaway is. Yes, you will see signs that the seasons are changing. Your responsibility is to make sure you prepare for winter. That you have your boots, and everything in place, so that when winter comes, you're ready. I'm not saying count every leaf on the tree and see, if it still have, we have to wait till all the leaves are falling. You count it. Oh, that there's only has 3 more leaves on this tree, so there's something happening here. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying general thing is you notice the things of winter, and there's some things of winter or the season changing that are in this text that should be mile markers for us.
You know why I struggle with that? Because as someone who likes ancient history and hearing about the changes of the ages, dark ages, ice ages, I'm that Christian scientist. You know how many times the sun has darkened?
I know I was talking
about. No. I'm remember this. I'm talking to the person. So like you're saying, prepare for the winter, and you always should be prepared, right? I'm saying one of the reasons why I took my stance was to say, if you're someone who's trying to prepare, and preparation is key for you, you might get lost in the preparation and not enjoy the experience or not realize the experience.
Perhaps.
Sure.
But immediately following this description is the story of the 10 virgins. It's almost like the same conversation. So he gives them all descriptions and then he tells them a story. The kingdom of heaven is like 10 people who waited on something. 5 who took the time to prepare. and were able to wait it out so that when the bridegroom came, they were ready. And 5 who didn't. They didn't get their boots out. They didn't put their jacket aside. They didn't secure the bag.
But it's a little different in that that's a preparation where it kind of talks about what Sharik is, I guess, alluding to, is that you understand Jesus is coming, and that's what you're working towards, right? In this particular thing.
No.
They're saying the end of the age, like all
It's
this
coming,
is
and the
coming.
end of the age may not necessarily be the same thing. It could be.
Well, I'm saying we don't know, but I'm saying based upon this, that's a preparation. This here in 24 is saying these things are going to happen, and these things, when you see these things, you know that, you know, either there's the end is still to come, or, you know, when you see these things, the end is here.
Right.
That's a little different than preparation.
Very different. Because
Preparation is I mean, that's a totally different mindset. Like, but be prepared. Like, make sure you just have your water and your dry food and all this kind of stuff, because you don't know what's going to happen. Looking at the signs is like,
don't know
when you start
when
seeing,
it's going to happen.
we don't know when it's going to happen.
Right.
When you're looking at the signs, you're like, oh, okay. So when I see this, okay, it's going to
It's
happen.
going down. It's going
Yeah.
down. Like,
Yeah, but at that point, it's too late.
Was
no.
not necessarily.
Not according to this. No.
Yeah, because when the bridegroom started to come, they looked up and it was too late. It was too late by the time they saw the sign that the bridegroom was coming. And that's why I like this story. They knew that the bridegroom was coming. They didn't know when. So they knew it was the time that he should be here, right? So that's why they were dressed. That's why they had the lamps, because they know it's about that time. They didn't show what time, but it's about that time. The signs have all demonstrated. The wedding invitation went out. All the things said around this time frame he should be here, but they didn't really know when.
But there's a difference between here, for example, you're saying the things went out and I think he's coming. But then the things went out again and I think he's coming. And then the things went out one more time and I think he... And there's these long
So let me ask you a
periods
question.
of
How
time
many times has the
between-
sun darkened?
Yo,
Right.
at least 4 or 5.
Right. To your point, it's been
that's-
happening for so long that everybody, all 10 virgins, fall asleep.
No, your story is I got an invitation and I know he should be coming based on the invitation, which is very different to say if you see 1, 2, 3, the end is near. And as you said, I look outside 20 minutes later. Wait a minute,
But it's not that. But it's not his story is an invitation. You're essentially saying, oh, I saw them holding hands. They must be serious. They must make out. Oh, he kissed him.
Oh, that's not his chick? Okay, let's just wait. And the
Like,
next
all
time
that
I
stuff.
see him, oh, he's with somebody else. Okay. But I'm saying the majority of people that I've seen read this or talk to about it, they're either discouraged because the signs happened so many times with so much time in between it that they've lost
that they've fallen asleep, like the virgins. They
So
fallen
the way
asleep.
you tie it in made sense.
Not falling asleep. I've left.
Well, yes, I'm saying in the story of the virgins, it has been so much time. Like it's almost like you're going on a date, and your date was supposed to come. He said around 7. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. He ain't reached yet.
Who's sitting there?
Exactly.
Yo, that's funny. That's actually a good one, because I was talking to
Exactly.
Abby. Abby was talking. She called me like about she was like, my HVAC is out, and they said they're gonna be here. And I was like, yo, they could be. Like, they're gonna be here at 5. I was like, yeah, but like if they're working on another unit, it may take them a lot longer to do it. And I was like, and you don't want them to leave. I was like, so you don't leave. I was like, like they're worth their salt. They're showing up. And so I was like, don't leave. And she said, I saw her at church, and she was like, I never let you know I left. She's like, I couldn't wait anymore. Like I had to leave. I was like, yes. I was like, he showed up, didn't he? She was like, yeah. I was like, I told you not to leave. And she was like, but I was hungry. That's what he said.
And what it was, but in this story, he didn't walk up at the door and they were there. They saw the movement that he was coming. And so these people start to marshal their forces because the thing that they told me was happening is finally here. And so they run off because they realize they're still short, or they're short now because they didn't prepare properly in advance. Now that it's imminent, because it wasn't that he walked up and then they were lost. They thought it was still close enough. They thought it was imminent, but still far enough. They could still go and come back.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and the fact that story is told after this kind of points out what's the point of this.
Sure.
You just make sure your boots put on and your jacket put on for winter, because winter mightn't come till February. You mightn't get snow till February.
And all the things that they mentioned, like, it's a lot of these things. I mean, you can't tell the difference. You don't know when it's gonna. I mean, like, outside of, kingdom against kingdom, nation will rise against nation. There'll be famines and earthquakes in various places, and all these are the beginning of it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's been going on for centuries.
You
and
fall
the sun
asleep.
has come and gone.
You fall asleep.
What I'm simply saying is the way my mind worked, and the person that I knew I was dealing with would be, you'd go back to the 1844, trying to pinpoint, or be more concerned that I have enough oil in my lamp versus the fact that I'm looking to meet my bridegroom.
But isn't this so?
Those two are not mutually exclusive.
No, I'm not saying they are. I'm simply saying there are people who will spend more time doing one over the other, which they can be done at the same time, but they will divide themselves.
Right. And what they should be doing based on the story is, because they're waiting for their bridegroom or interested in being there for their bridegroom, that informs what they do. And I think,
but it's also but you're right though.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying the focus. I'm agreeing with your emphasis on focus, but showing how the emphasis on focus influences the act. Because I could focus on the oil just to make sure I have enough oil and have no interest in the bridegroom.
Correct.
But if I have interest in the bridegroom, because I know I'm not really sure, I will make sure and source oil for the interest. And so it really becomes a matter of, as Kendrick would put it, what emphasis is on which syllable.
Oh Lord.
Where you put in it, where you put in the emphasis.
What did you say about rhetorical?
Rhetorical.
Right. That.
Because he was talking to the disciples.
Yes.
So he's talking specifically to them. So all the things that he's saying to them, that's not necessarily for us. The concept is for us. The specifics here aren't necessarily for us. Agreed?
Some of the specifics can be.
25.
Because he's talking.
No, I mean, some of the specifics have relevance.
He's not talking, but he's talking to them about, because he was like, then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations.
We would have to determine
like, all
which
of
is
those,
related to which
but
part
all
of
of
which
those things
subject.
all of those things happen to them.
Correct.
Right? He's
Correct.
speaking to them. And at that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many, because of the increase of wickedness and love of most will grow cold. But the one who stands firm to the end. I mean, all those things happened already, even in their lifetime. I mean, you look at ancient history, you look at Rome.
Yeah,
and
that
all,
happened.
like that all, and then you move Greeks, and then you go, like,
It
all
happens
that stuff
repeatedly.
happened over and over again, to the point where I don't see how this can be specific to us.
Correct.
Go to 25.
But no, not go to 25, because to Jared's point, it's the concept. It's understanding.
I get
it's
the concept. What I'm saying is, do not, as I said to the person, do not get lost in this.
24.
Don't get lost in 24.
Yeah, you can't do 24 without 25.
Go to 25.
Yes. Because 25 unpacks 24.
If you
or
close
contextualize it.
at 24,
yeah, you can't just stop at 24.
This ain't it. Like,
and Kenneth, to your point, those people didn't live for 1,000 years, so those things happen in their time,
and it has to happen.
No, just you have to be ready, because you're not living forever. You got to make sure you have
Sure.
oil for the things that you experience in your time. So that even if you don't experience all of it, when your time is up, your time is up. That's when the bridegroom has arrived.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So readiness is still the major takeaway.
Yes.
Readiness and faithfulness, because it's two parables Jesus tells back to back. The one of the oil and the one of the gold. One group of people weren't prepared. The other person in this story who was at fault wasn't faithful with the time that was given to them, which could be also laid over with readiness, you know. And so,
well, they were called. It was laziness,
correct,
which can be linked to readiness,
correct,
or lack thereof.
But both of them was, this master is coming back. Are you prepared for his return? Are you prepared by having done what you needed to do in terms of being faithful to what he asked of you?
You know what just came to mind? Consider the last days your life.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
I agree with that.
That 100%. 100%. Move on to 25.
So you're saying that with all of that wasted ink?
Carry on.
Oh my God.
No, it's not
That's
wasted
not what we
ink.
said. You didn't say wasted it. I'm simply saying look at the end of time as your life.
Yes.
And so therefore these
You're
things can happen in your life. They may not happen in your life. You might get struck by lightning. I'm not saying that should happen to you. I'm simply saying when he says you don't know, yeah, because you don't know when you're going to die. So how about you just live out your little 70 plus and call it a day. Or your 2 plus. Never know. Just do the best you can with what you got. And don't focus on trying to calculate this. Move to 25 and...
Because those disciples thought they was going to see Jesus. They thought Jesus was coming back before they was going to die. They really thought it. And you saw it in the way that they did their
Before
work.
you even got there, they thought he was going to take over Rome. Then they realized that ain't it. Oh, wait, let's go back. Oh, he had to die? Got it. That means he got to come back still. All right, we're just going to sit here and wait for it. We were just wrong for a minute. Like...
And then they all dead. All of them.
And now they've been dead for a long time.
Really,
For a long
like, there
time.
ain't no kind of left of them right now. Like, there's
I
nothing.
don't think Paul or John thought that it
We'd
would be
still be around.
2,000 years later and Jesus still not here.
And that's a really long time.
Exactly.
In his world, no. But in our world,
whose
yes.
world?
Yes, in our world.
God's world?
Yeah, it's not-
Yeah, that's not. But I'm saying, like in our world, like that's a long time.
The problem is,
Paul
we're
writing about we who are left, you know, we who are alive when he comes.
Like it.
It was really presumptuous of him to say that.
Dude, you know how long he's been dead?
It just shows how we equalize ourselves to him. Our time is his time.
When did he die? What year?
Paul? 4. No, I'm joking. Like, probably in the 40s or 50s.
60s or 70s.
Really?
No,
No, it'd be the
No, it'd
40s
be
and
less
the
than that.
50s. It'd have to be the 40s and the 50s.
Paul,
Paul.
the apostle.
Yeah.
Less than that.
If Jesus was at 32,
If AD,
it's after death.
yes.
That's 32.
No, it's no. AD is the year of the Lord. It's Annos. It's Greek for year of the Lord, and so or the age of the Lord. Or same idea,
Right.
but it doesn't start exactly at Jesus' birth, but it almost aligns.
Right. So I'm saying if Jesus was 32, the apostle himself is probably 2030s. Right?
Yeah, but I'm saying based on what happens in Acts and the timelines that are in Acts, and if you read the front of your Bibles, you know, some of the letters are written 80 40, 80 50, 80, you know, in the period between at least 40 to 60. So if Paul is writing the letters around that time, he had to live at least till
This
then.
is what I was saying I'd give it to the 50s. I don't know about the 60s.
You talking about his age or
No,
the year?
The year.
In the
Yeah, it
50s.
had to be at least the 60.
No, but all right. Another time dead, still no.
I don't even know what you just said.
He could have written a letter and then died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so see this? Titus. Paul writes perhaps in the early 60s after release from his first imprisonment. So I mean, and then they're dating these based on, you know, other things that are happening in other parts of the Bible. So like they're giving you ballpark periods. So
Okay.
you know, the temple was taken down in AD 70, and so likely, you know, John is probably the only one who lived beyond that. but we can't confirm or not. But you know,
Timothy died?
It's a long time.
Timothy wasn't dead. Anyway, we don't know.
yeah, we don't know for sure because we wasn't there, but we can ballpark it.
This is why we skip over 24.
Right. Correct. Correct.
We need to go back to the Bible again.
Correct.
Yes, we need to go back to the Bible again.
I just have one more thing that I wanted to share.
Carry on.
Matthew 20.
I feel like that was
Man, we killed Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew had a lot going on.
Yeah. Verse.
17 to 23. I know I shared this with the people who were on in person on last Saturday, but I wanted to share it here. Can we go ahead and read it?
Now Jesus was going up to Jerusalem. On the way, he took the 12 aside and said to them, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the third day, he will be raised to life." You said through 20?
23.
23. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down asked a favor of him. "What is it you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right hand and the other at your left in your kingdom." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup that I am going to drink?" "We can," they answered. And Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father."
So the thought that I had was, I wrote down, often we hear but don't listen, or we listen selectively. Because Jesus said, we are going up to Jerusalem, and it's almost like after that they heard blah 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 blah, because for James and John mom to come and say, "Can we have 2 spots?" immediately after he tells them all of these details, they clearly weren't listening, and all they heard was, "We're going to Jerusalem," and they kind of tuned the rest out. And so I was just thinking, how selectively we listen sometimes, and we hear the pieces that we want to hear and don't, process all the details. Because there's no way you could necessarily perceive that you will have a right hand and a left hand to sit at if he tells you we are going up there to die.
Unless they didn't think it was immediate.
But even still, he said, "I'm going there to die."
Right, that doesn't
They had their own
way.
understanding of what was happening, and so they filtered what he was saying through their
I'm thinking
understanding.
about it this way. So they believed he had to get a throne, right? We dine in Jerusalem. Is it today? I don't know. But before we die, we sit on this throne. So guess what? Can we chill on the left and the right? We're gonna live up there for a little bit. Then they're gonna kill you.
Perhaps. But they still missed the message. They still weren't listening to what he said, because it's not according to what we've been reading in Matthew. He's been telling them this
Yes.
for a while now.
It doesn't match the scriptures. For them, it doesn't match the scriptures.
Because they weren't
They
reading it
weren't
properly.
reading.
No, as I said, for them, it doesn't match the scriptures.
Again, selective reading. Because the scriptures actually describes something else altogether that they selectively didn't read, which comes back to my same point. A lot of times we hear what we want to hear, which goes back to even Matthew 24. We selectively listening and not listening for the story that's being told.
Were there people at the time that knew, per the scriptures, that this was going to happen? So you had Anna and Simeon that knew about the birth of Christ, that they were looking for it and they recognized it. Were there people during this time that recognized what the scriptures called for and that he was going to die?
So,
because the disciples didn't.
So, I would say that everybody was aware of what the scriptures said about the suffering servant and all of that.
Correct.
Everybody was aware of it.
They didn't know who.
But Oh, I talking about Isaiah. Isaiah's descriptions
Oh,
of
you're
it.
saying Isaiah. Okay.
Isaiah has lots of descriptions of him. And they knew Isaiah. They knew it back and forth because they had to repeat it and learn it by the time they were 12.
Sure.
So they knew what the scripture said about it. But they emphasized the syllable that was important to them. He's going to be this conquering Messiah, which he's going to be. And because that's what they're looking for, they under occupation of Rome, they skip over the suffering servant part and jump straight to the we going up to Jerusalem part. And so it's just a focus and an emphasis, you know, on one thing over, or selectively choosing instead of keeping the whole thing in view.
So your question for you was, what are you missing?
No, I was just saying to be careful not to listen selectively.
Gotcha.
To be sensitive to the fact that people listen selectively, and perhaps I am listening to.
I think I listen selectively. Sometimes I wonder if I listen selectively.
We hear the pieces we want to hear that align with the things that are interesting to us.
But then it's also time. Like, it's timing also. And to our earlier conversation, like, you listen selectively based upon where you are in your life at that point. But when you're, you know, we're talking about 6,000 years. We're talking about how long they've been dead, 2,000 years. A year of our lives in that context is nothing. And you take that out to what God. And so, you know, I think we selectively hear based upon where we are in our life.
Lorraine says, so how much of that do we do with reading the Bible now?
That's my point.
That's just, yeah.
That's my point. That's exactly my point. Yeah, I know that in my experience with church, we have a few books of the Bible we tend to focus on. Chapters and points of emphasis. Instead of necessarily reading the whole thing through and being able to contextualize that with this and have that kind of breadth of understanding. Because that's what Jesus says to the Pharisees when they come and oppose him in 22. You are in error because you don't know the scriptures or the power of God. It's ironic that he says that to them because they come with a question about the scriptures when they ask him about the resurrection. Because they're selectively listening. That's what the devil does in the temptation with Jesus. When he brings the scriptures, he selectively chose a scripture and interpreted it and understood it. Yes, to mislead Jesus, but you know, when you have that kind of selective understanding and you just sit in 24 and you don't include 25 and 26 or 23, you end up with selective listening. And then you respond according to your selective understanding, and you have your mother come and ask for something that you can't even get. It wasn't even on the agenda.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you guys when we get off. This is not the time to have that conversation.
No, that's interesting.
Yes, Daniel agreed. He said typology. How many of us know the sanctuary message but miss the application? Yes.
Yeah.
Unless you guys have anything else, I think this is where we can
Take it away.
close off and do takeaways. Please, guys who are online, we talked about a number of things, but if there was anything that stood out to you that caught your attention, was like, oh, that was for me, please share it in the chat. You know, articulating your takeaways kind of solidifies them and also gives the people around you a chance to see and hear things that they may have missed and benefit from, you know, the kinds of things that were said, because we all focus in on different things, and that kind of gives us a breadth of understanding. So if you could do that, we'll share them and we'll share ours so that we can all benefit. Sharika, takeaways?
You know me, I struggle with community. So even though I felt on fire today, I can definitely say it wasn't me talking. That was not a Sharika moment. It wasn't a kid. That wasn't me. It's just a reminder of being the type of person I am. I don't use the word friend loosely at all. And even in all transparency, Jared, you and I had a hiccup earlier this year. But if you're dedicated, if you're going to define friend the way Christ defines friend, then there's a level of dedication that comes with that. And so be very cognizant of who you define as friend, because then you're held to this standard of being dedicated to that relationship. And I think just as a society, we use that word very loosely. Now, if it's not your friend, that's cool. If they're a Gentile, if they're a tax collector, let them be that. But the minute you put them into your circle and your community,
you call them brother.
You call them brother.
Not just friend, brother.
Brother, sister, homie, you know, like these words of family ties. Then we coming for you, Kenrick.
Don't come for me.
I'm simply saying the fam is coming for you because that's just what the fam does. It's going to take care of itself. So really be cognizant of whether you want to be a Gentile or a tax collector. And maybe that's cool, but a community is not going to allow itself to implode. So either you in on it or you're not. Your choice.
Kendrick?
So one of my takeaways is that I can't take that away. Like I'm still struggling.
We're kicking him out. Like,
I'm still struggling with that.
Throw the whole Kendrick away.
I can't figure that takeaway. I've been trying to because I wanted to use it as my takeaway, and I just can't.
It wasn't for you. It was for me.
No. I'm saying as we're going through, we were thinking. I was like, what's my takeaway gonna be? I was like, I would like for that to be my takeaway. I just
you ain't with it.
I can't honestly say that's my takeaway. There are probably 2 or 3 things I could do, but the one is, you're 24. Like, even when I've read it in the past, I've read it and I've looked for it literally, and I've been trying to match it up. And now, as you bring 25 into it, and you see how it naturally progresses, one thing is like, you idiot, like, how come you couldn't see it?
Because you stopped at 24.
It's like, and I kept going back, like, whatever. Google this. Like, it didn't. But now it makes sense. To the overall point that I think I made before, like, one of the things I'm learning over the past year or so has been, ultimately, what is God trying to communicate? And so, by hearing that and going through that process, I think it made sense to me. A little bit more sense.
So that's kind of leading into my takeaway. What is God intending to communicate? And so there are 2 things that stood out to me. Both of them came from Sharika. First thing is, he's trying to communicate that we need to be committed to our familial relationships and spiritually familiar relationships. I would even go on to say any relationships that we have, we should really be in the same level of commitment, but particularly those. When I'm committed to the relationship, I respond to conflict differently. My response to conflict indicates
how
committed I am to the relationship.
Yeah.
The ease at which I could dismiss and release people shows my commitment to the relationship. Because there's some people I'll fight for and others I won't fight for. And that, is indicated by that. And so I need to process that. And then the second one is it's his team. It's his team. He's invited me to be on his team. And so as a member of his team, there's natural concern for me, but nothing as he does is necessarily about me, and is a part of him facilitating his team. Even his concern for me, which is a genuine concern, which is a deep concern, which is an intimate concern. It's not about me.
You're important.
But not that important. You know what? I want to add on to that 1 Corinthians 10:13. And it's Pastor Wright who brought that to my attention. There's the way he said it. But I want to leave it for any other person who might be, struggling with Sharika's takeaway. 1 Corinthians 10:13. It's 13?
No temptation has overtaken you.
Right. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man. Means you're not that special. That they ain't making no special temptation just for you. The devil ain't bringing no special temptation, and God ain't, allowing
no
special temptation. All that you're getting is what's common to everybody. So it kind of lends support to the idea of being important, but not that important.
I'm gonna put that on my Insta story with no sort of context, and just let everybody think about that.
I'm gonna say it to my girls every time.
So Daniel was asking a question. He said, I just tuned in late. Not sure if it was discussed already, but something stood out to me was Christ addressing the Sadducees concerning marriage and the resurrection. So I asked what about it, and he said, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob being the God of the living, not the dead. Yeah, he continued. Initial thought is that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are dead, so it wasn't making sense at first. But after digging, I found that he was addressing the Sadducees concerning the resurrection. And I'm assuming that more is going to come in a few seconds, so I'm going to allow him to process that. I was looking to see if Avanik and Z, who are online on the other forum, share their takeaways, but it doesn't appear that is the case.
I thought about that, Daniel. I don't think in the same place that you did, but it crossed my mind when I read it.
Well, I'm waiting to hear what he says, but and not to jump ahead of him. But yeah, he's on the right track. The reason he referenced them is because they were dead.
Right.
But because he called himself the God of the living and dead, there has to be a resurrection. They're not going to stay dead. It's kind of the point that I understood him to be making by using them to make the point. Which is why he starts with, you're in error because you don't know the scriptures or the power of God. And you don't know the scriptures because you're listening selectively.
Was that 29? 27, 29?
I don't remember what it was.
Anyway, you pointed it out to me that you were in error. That it was...
Yeah. Vanessa? Okay, no takeaways from Vanessa. It's just, I had to include you.
Not fair.
I thought you were online watching inside.
Only when I'm not.
Okay.
That you ask.
Okay. Fair enough. Alright,
Lorraine has hers.
Go ahead, Rachel.
When I read, not only should I consider the context, but consider the condition of my heart and where I am mentally, making sure I'm not adding to or taking away from what God said. Sometimes God will say, some things God says will cut deep, but it's for my benefit. Just because it hurts or makes me feel uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad for me.
You know what this goes back to? Defining good.
Yeah. Man and God do not define good the same. Your positive or negative reactions to life is not proportional
to God's will. So here it is. If what we said was correct, all right, that is for his sake. When the other verse says all things work together for good, it means that they're working for his sake. I'm not believing that the situation is necessarily going to resolve itself in a way
that's favorable to you.
That's favorable to me, yes. It's not necessarily going to resolve itself.
It's not necessarily your positive or negative reactions to things in life is not necessarily proportional.
At the time.
In general.
No, I'm saying what I was saying was
not in general, because at the end of the day, the whole point is my statement was in the statement the idea of all things work together for good to them that love the Lord doesn't necessarily mean that the resolution of a situation or the ending of a situation is favorable outcome for me. But because in that moment
at all, it doesn't necessarily mean favorable outcome for me.
Yeah, that's where I'm having a problem.
In terms of the specifics of my situation.
That particular situation at that time.
Correct.
I won't say it's time bound.
Because my thing is the reason why I push back on that is because
there are a lot of situations that you go through now that play out, right?
Right.
And you make a decision and something happens, but that doesn't mean that it's the final thing that occurs. And ultimately, I guess the reason why I'm pushing back is that I think God wants us with him.
Right.
And so ultimately, if we get with him, this situation actually did work out
Right.
So
for
the
my
that's what we're talking about.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So,
No,
and
we
so
agree.
at that time.
We agree.
The reason why we mentioned it was because last time we were saying how sometimes things seem to be yanked from us or given to us, and we equate the yank to be God bad and the give to be God
Correct.
good.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what we're just saying. They're not proportional.
Correct.
And we, a lot of times we define, when we use that text, we're using that text to say, right now this situation feels uncomfortable, but one day down the line it's going to be comfortable for me.
On earth.
Yes.
On earth.
And
That's what I'm saying. With time. I'm saying
no, it's going to be the for example, I'm sick with cancer. All things work together for good translates to I'll be healed
Sure.
for a lot of people.
And you will be.
After you wake up from the resurrection
Yes.
morning. But that's I said on earth. I did say on earth.
No, that's why I said at that particular time.
No, during your time on earth.
During
Not
your time
even
on-
that
yes.
particular time.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, so we're saying the same thing.
At that time.
We are saying the same
Your
thing.
time here.
Yes.
All we were saying is that the definition of good is
It's not
it's
universal.
it's not ours. It's his definition of good.
I just want to make sure people don't take away the context of for my sake only.
Correct.
That's not what that was very specific to that story. Now it can't.
In general.
No. I don't know if that's in general.
On my time on earth, it is in
For when God
Yes,
was saying,
I'm doing this for my
I'm
sake."
doing this for my sake, that was in that particular situation. Can it be applied to other situations? Yes. But I don't know if that's necessarily the rule and the norm for what God is doing.
I think God the Father, yes. Jesus, whole different argument. But
I don't know where else it is. And the reason why I can say I'm comfortable in saying that it's not the norm is because he actually came out and said it. The fact that he had to point it out means that, and to let them know that this is for my sake and not yours, means that it was something very specific that he wanted to let them know. And so most of the time, based upon that, I'm assuming it's for both.
Yes, but like I said, when he takes care, when he does it for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's for his sake, for his name's sake.
Yes, agreed.
For his name's sake.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. All right.
But that doesn't mean that it's not for my sake.
No.
And that's what I want people
No, it doesn't mean
Yes.
it's not for my sake.
Yes.
But his
It's always for his sake.
for
Always for his sake.
name's sake.
Yes, but it's always for his namesake. In this particular situation, it was saying, this is only for my namesake and not yours.
Correct.
Which means he pulled you out of it.
But to be fair, in even him saying that, he said both sides of the coin, the good you experience and the bad you experience are for my name's sake. Because he didn't
Correct.
he wasn't just describing one thing.
Sure.
He was describing the mercy
Yes.
and he was describing the punishment.
Correct.
And so he was saying
Yes.
both of them are for my name's sake. And
Yes.
don't get it twisted.
Yes.
All that I'm doing with you is for my name's sake.
Yes.
Cool.
Agreed.
Cool beans.
Sugar, would you pray for us to close out?
Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for allowing us to commune together, allowing us to be vessels for each other, and allowing for you to be amongst us this evening. I ask that you continue to give us the zeal to want to get to know you better as we jump into year 5. I ask that you use us and our regular viewers as a means to light a fire in others, that they may be just a little bit more thirsty than they were this time last year. Please take us all home safely. and save us in your kingdom. In Jesus' name I pray.
Again, we here every first and third Friday. It's worked out that we have ladies on first Friday and then others on third Friday. So we're now referring to it as Ladies First Friday because it just works out that way. If you don't already have the app, download it from any mobile store. If it's on your tablet, on your phone, whatever. It comes in various languages. If you read Japanese, it's in there. If you read Creole, it's in there. And that, we have multiple languages for just reading the Bible. It's just a tool to help you spend time in the Word every day. Also, take advantage of our online forums. Like our page, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're doing better with the Twitter than we have in the past. And until the next time, drink up.
Drink up.
Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
This is water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty. Drink up.
Drink up. Hashtag Instagram, Facebook. We all there. Follow us. Tweet us. I have a mic on right now.
Hard weekend, it left me high and dry.